Hi, I'm Nancy Voss, and I am here with Joanne Bozeman and Kate Fraser-Mealy.
Hello.
And we are here to talk today about what we have learned since publishing the best-selling book, Singing Through Change, Women's Voices in Midlife, Menopause, and Beyond. What we've learned about menopause, what we've observed about singing through menopause and aging voice as researchers and authors and speakers. Joanne, why don't you start us out?
Sure. Um, I've learned that we need more research. That's sort of non-controversial, but we need more research that's specific to singers and professional voice users. And I would say singers particularly because the demands on the voice are pretty extended, if you will. So we need more of that. We need more longitudinal research. That is where we're looking at a voices, and you have to do some controls with age because age can be a factor, but looking at a voice that's going through perimenopause and menopause and beyond. So the before, the during, and the after, to see how voices respond very differently to it. There is research going on in Spain, headed up by researcher Philippa La, and I just heard her talk recently, and a lot of what her research is showing up, it really echoes a lot of what we learned in our process of writing the book and talking to women. There's a lot more to come. They were kind of slowed up by COVID, but it was very interesting hearing her talk. And what is similar is that not everybody's going to experience it the same way. Mm-hmm. Everyone should continue to sing, ideally with a skilled teacher. That was another point that she made. And of course, we've been saying that all along, and that it's a unique experience for everyone. And if we have time, I might just mention that looking at general menopause research is kind of interesting too, to see what we can maybe compare and contrast to what's going on with singing.
Yeah, it's becoming a more talked about topic in many different parts of the world, right? Menopause is coming out of the dark. Yeah.
And the three of us did participate in a group that Felipe La consulted to ask the questions for the study that she's doing. And we sent comments in and had a really lovely exchange with her on that beginning part of her journey.
Yeah. Fantastic. Kate, what are your takeaway things in the last couple of years on menopause and the voice and aging voice?
Well, what I've observed is that singers and teachers are becoming more aware that they have to get some new skills. They have to re-educate just about everything that they know. And those of you who have a reaction to that need to take a look at that. Because what was good for your voice in your mid to late 20s, maybe up through mid to late 40s, might not be what you need in your mid to late 60s. We have said in our book, and we do think we're the first ones to draw this distinction, that you can't lump the menopausal and beyond voice with the perimenopausal voice and aging. Mm-hmm. There's actually 2 or 3 different categories, and that's what Joanne was just talking about. We need more research in that. So teachers and singers are very interested, and I know that there's been a little bit of frustration in the group because we have not provided exercises. Mm-hmm. And part of my reason for that, and I think you too, is that the exercise is not where the magic happens. You can do an exercise and actually have it hurt, not help. So that's why you need that pair of extra ears who has been through this before to help. Pacing is important. Creating safe spaces is important. Helping a singer become aware of their inner dialogue and changing that, and encouraging the singer to explore and realizing that you learn how to use your new voice more in exploration than you do with a teacher,
Yeah.
although both are very, very important. So what I'm seeing is that we're exploring many ways to facilitate these things. And that is what has to be infused in the specific exercises and in encouraging people to tend their own creativity, regardless of whether or not it's singing.
Yeah.
Right? And tend their own movement and tend their own core, find out what that means. And from that, all these other things start to regenerate.
Wonderful. I'd like to add to your another reason not to prescribe blanket exercises is that the vocal ranges that the women's voices settle in post-menopause varies greatly. And then it changes through aging as well. In fact, in our book, in our research, 5% of the women that we talked to felt that their voices got higher and lighter. The other 95% either said they didn't notice a change, their voices got slightly lower, or in one case, one of our women who was in her 80s at the time, she was now in the baritone section of a co-ed choir. So how can you design blanket warm-ups that fit the entire human vocal spectrum? And I would like to add, though, that woman that I mentioned who in her 80s was in the baritone section, she was in my church choir, and she needed permission from me in order to go into the men's section, because the story that she told herself that was inside of her core was that this isn't okay. I'm a woman and I must be failing because I can't sing in the women's parts. And it would be very humbling and embarrassing to go into the men's section. But for her, singing was more important than her ego, thankfully. And so she came to me and said, do you think this is something that could be okay? I'm like, hell yes, excuse my language, but yes, this is your voice. This is how you should use it. And that is the biggest takeaway that I got from this book, and that I've observed now in everything else that I'm reading on the topic of aging, period, is that the stories that we tell ourselves as we go through the process often play out in how we never land, but how our journey continues on the other side.
Yes.
I'll add a little to that. I talked to an ally of ours who's a male voice teacher, actually. And he said he found that when he would teach women of our subject matter, that we're going through some voice changes having to do with perimenopause and menopause, he said that if that woman had had a vocal crisis when she was younger, she'd ever been through kind of a vocal insecurity time and then came through it, that often recurred when she had trouble during the menopausal issues. It was like, oh my gosh, here we go. It was sort of like, here we go again. Talk about a repeated story. So he found that to be the case. And actually, a friend of mine who's a singing voice specialist, SLP, said, oh, that happened to her. Talk about it. She was a very educated person. And still she had that story play in her mind as well. So we have to watch out for that.
Yep. That blaming of yourself, and here we go again. Yes.
No, take an optimistic view. Look at the possibilities. Exciting for, hey, I'm going to be molded and shaped in a slightly different way now. What's it going to be like, and what can I do with that?
Exactly.
Can I tell another story real quick? Yeah. Okay. I talked to a woman in England who was, the typical churchy sort of choir soprano. And when she got beyond the menopausal state, she found her voice just kind of settled down a little bit. She could still sing high notes, but her tessitura was more comfortable lower. So she talked to her choral director and said, I think I would like to try singing alto for, at least for a little while. I'm more comfortable down there. And he was just fine with it. But when she showed up and sat with the alto section, her former soprano colleague said, oh, Susie, what are you doing with the altos?
And that reminds me of something we talk about in the book too. In church choirs and in community choirs, very often being a soprano is seen as better than. Yeah. or being a first soprano is better than a second soprano, right? And in professional choirs, in the professional world, that doesn't exist because it's the question of how the parts are balancing and what a voice brings to the timbre of the section. And I think that that's worth bringing up because soprano doesn't mean better than. It means a part that has to be balanced.
You got it. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. I'm sure we could talk on this topic for an hour or more. So thank you for joining us here, everyone. It is delightful to have you in our community of Singing Through Change, and let us know how we can support you in your journey. Bye-bye.
Bye.